I spent my whole life providing for my family, and they called me selfish for getting married. This is the story of Kendrick Moore, a man who sacrificed everything for the people he loved the most, his mother and 3 sisters, only to realize that love sometimes comes with a price you can't see until it hits you in the face. Before we start, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy real-life family dramas with lessons you can actually apply, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the stories on Tales by Desi. Kendrick grew up in South Dallas, Texas. When he was just 14, his father died suddenly at a construction site. One moment his dad was joking about the barbecue they would have that weekend, and the next he was gone. No savings, no life insurance, just 4 women looking at one boy confused and scared, and a silence that felt heavier than anything Kendrick had ever known. Suddenly, Kendrick became the man of the house. His mother, Gloria, leaned on him for everything, from bills to emotional support, while his 3 sisters depended on him in ways that were small at first but grew larger every year. Simone, the eldest, had a sharp tongue and strong opinions. Renee, the middle child, knew how to guilt him into helping, and Kayla, the youngest, brought chaos wherever she went. Kendrick didn't argue, he didn't complain, he just moved. By 16, he was working part-time at a warehouse and cleaning houses on weekends. By 18, he had taken on 2 full-time jobs while finishing high school. While other teenagers were driving, dating, and dreaming about college, Kendrick's life was bills, work, and responsibility. Every dollar he earned went to keeping the family afloat, paying rent, buying groceries, fixing broken appliances, covering medical bills. And slowly, without anyone ever saying it out loud, Kendrick's sacrifices became their expectation. What started as gratitude became entitlement. Invitations to hang out with friends were ignored because Kendrick was needed at home. His first serious girlfriend left after months of tension with his sisters. "They'll never accept anyone you care about," she warned him before walking out. Kendrick tried to argue, but deep down, he already knew she was right. It wasn't that Kendrick didn't want to love. He wanted a life for himself, but he had been taught for as long as he could remember that if he didn't provide, nobody else would. Every decision, every relationship, every chance at happiness seemed to collide with his duty. And that is how Kendrick Moore spent the first years of his adulthood, giving everything to the family that depended on him while slowly losing pieces of himself in the process. But little did he know, life had a plan to test him further. The sacrifices he made, the people he loved, and the family he couldn't say no to were all about to collide in ways he never imagined. Kendrick Moore had learnt early that love came with invisible invoices, debts nobody signed for but that always needed paying. By the time he entered college in Houston, Kendrick was juggling classes, late-night shifts, and constant phone calls from home. Gloria needed bills covered, Simone needed help with a failing store she insisted she could manage, Renee needed money for emergencies that never seemed to end. Even Kayla, barely 20, started showing signs of recklessness. Her small crises now demanded Kendrick's attention. At first, he thought he could balance it all: school, work, and family. He had done it before, but now the stakes were higher. His tuition, books, and living expenses had to come from a combination of part-time jobs and a scholarship that appeared at just the right moment, like fate itself had stepped in. Kendrick never knew who had made it possible. He just knew it arrived when he was one step from giving up. Despite his exhaustion, he continued sending money home. He missed birthdays, football games, and Friday nights with friends. Every call from his family came with the same undertone: "You owe us." A text from Simone about store repairs, a voicemail from Renee about a last-minute emergency, a message from Gloria asking about rent she insisted she couldn't cover this month. Each one was a reminder that Kendrick's life was no longer his own. And the girlfriends? They didn't last. Every woman he cared about was slowly poisoned by his family's words. "She's after your money. She doesn't belong here. Once she marries you, she won't care about us anymore." And just like that, each relationship ended. Kendrick thought he was unlucky in love. He thought maybe he wasn't enough. But deep down, he knew something else. He could feel it in the way his sister's eyes flickered when he talked about going on dates, in the subtle sighs of his mother when he mentioned plans outside the house. It wasn't luck or incompatibility. It was control. It was entitlement. They wanted him, but only as the boy who carried everything for them, not as a man who could live for himself. One night, sitting alone in a dim dorm room, Kendrick stared at his laptop. The scholarship email still sat open, unread. He thought about his life, 15 years of sacrifice, 2 jobs every day, no social life, no real love. He realized that while he built a future, he had also built invisible chains around himself. Every dollar he earned, every favor he gave, every moment he spent fixing problems that weren't his, tightened those chains. And then came the thought that both terrified and electrified him. What if I finally said no? The room felt heavier. Silence pressed in from the window, from the buzzing fluorescent light. He wondered what would happen if he refused the request, if he put himself first. Would Gloria cry? Would Simone scream? Would Renee manipulate? Would Kayla throw another crisis in his lap? And, the scariest thought of all, would love ever come to him if he stopped being the provider first? Kendrick closed his laptop. He lay back on his bed, heart pounding. He felt the weight of everything pressing down, and a strange thrill ran through him, a dangerous thought that maybe, just maybe, there was life beyond the demands of the people who had never let him be free. But little did he know, life was about to test him in ways he never expected. A woman from his past, a hidden hand that once helped him when he was desperate, was about to enter his life again and shake everything he thought he knew about love, family, and sacrifice. By the time Kendrick Moore turned 25, his life had started to shift. His hard work in college, combined with the mysterious scholarship that had saved him, allowed him to land a job in logistics. He worked long hours, but unlike before, he saw a path, a way to turn exhaustion into something tangible, a business of his own. Kendrick poured everything into his company. He studied contracts late at night, negotiated deals that seemed impossible, and slowly built a small distribution business from scratch. He celebrated each milestone quietly, knowing that a single failure could ripple through the life he had worked so hard to protect. And then, money came. Not just enough to survive, real life-changing money. A bank account that didn't make him sweat for every dollar. A small office, employees who depended on him. Finally, Kendrick had a taste of freedom. But freedom came with its own kind of prison. Even as Kendrick built his success, his family's expectations grew. Gloria called daily, requesting money for bills, groceries, repairs, anything she decided was urgent. Simone took over one of his small retail shops and promptly mismanaged it, claiming she needed extra funds to keep it afloat. Renee bounced from one emergency to another, and Kayla, now pregnant, leaned on him for every prenatal expense and daycare plan. Kendrick kept giving. He reasoned that they were family. They had no one else. He remembered his father's words, the ones he barely understood at 14. Family comes first, Kendrick, always. And so he swallowed the frustration, the exhaustion, and even the creeping resentment. But there were cracks. Every time he brought a woman home, the sisters would subtly undermine her. "She's just after your money," Simone whispered. Renee would scoff and roll her eyes. Kayla would make sly comments about letting go of family responsibilities. Gloria, though quieter, gave Kendrick that same disappointed look she always wore when he even thought of taking time for himself. Kendrick felt trapped. He had worked his whole life to provide, and yet every accomplishment seemed to deepen their claim on him. The house he built for his mother, never used. They all moved into his mansion instead. The money he sent for school or emergencies, treated like entitlement, never gratitude. One evening, after a particularly heated argument over store losses, Kendrick sat alone in the kitchen. He stared at the bills, at the phone buzzing with messages, at the family photos that now felt like chains. He wondered how it had come to this. Success had not freed him, it had made him a bigger target. And yet, there was a flicker of hope.
One evening, after paying yet another round of bills for his family, Kendrick sat alone in his mansion. The silence felt heavy, almost suffocating. He thought about the years he had given, every dollar, every late night, every sacrifice, and realized how little control he actually had over his own life. Success hadn't freed him. It had only made him more responsible, more trapped. But then a memory surfaced. A woman from his past, someone who had quietly helped him when everything seemed impossible. At the time, he had never fully understood her kindness. Now, thinking of her, he felt a strange spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could see the man he had become, not just the provider, but the person he wanted to be. Kendrick leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, he wondered if life could be different, if love could exist alongside loyalty, if respect could coexist with family, and finally, he could dare to set the boundaries he had never allowed himself to enforce. Something was about to change, and this time, he wasn't sure if he was ready or if he could let it happen. Kendrick didn't expect to see her again. Her name was Amara Lewis, and the first time they met had been years ago in a crowded university hallway where she quietly handed him a notebook he had dropped without a word of judgment. He remembered her calm, her presence, but at the time, life was too loud, too heavy, and he barely noticed her. Now, standing across a charity gala room in Midtown Houston, she looked entirely different, confident, radiant, and somehow, as if time had folded in on itself, familiar. Kendrick felt a pull in his chest, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Their eyes met. Recognition sparked instantly. Kendrick froze for a second, trying to place her face. And then she smiled, a small, knowing smile, and everything he had been carrying suddenly felt lighter. Amara approached him. She didn't ask about his wealth or his work. She didn't comment on the mansion, the success, or the status he had fought so hard to earn. She asked one question that cut straight to his heart. "Are you happy?" The question felt dangerous. Kendrick didn't know how to answer. He thought about Gloria calling, Simone nagging, Renee whining, Kayla demanding. He thought about every girlfriend who had left because they couldn't compete with his family. He thought about himself, tired, trapped, and still trying to please everyone else. Before he could respond, one of his old friends came by, and Amara slipped away into the crowd. Kendrick watched her go and felt something unfamiliar: hope. Over the next few weeks, Kendrick couldn't stop thinking about her. And then, as if the universe was testing him, she reached out. A simple message: "Coffee, I want to hear your story." They met at a small cafe in Houston's Third Ward. Kendrick talked about school, work, family, the sacrifices he had made, and she listened, really listened. She never interrupted, she never judged. For the first time in years, he felt heard. But the pull of his family was relentless. Almost immediately, news of Amara's presence reached his sisters. Simone scoffed when she saw her on social media. Who does she think she is? Renee whispered rumors to Gloria. Kayla rolled her eyes at Kendrick when he mentioned a simple coffee date. Even his mother subtly hinted that a girlfriend could take him away from us if he wasn't careful.
Kendrick began to see a pattern, one he had ignored for years. Every woman he had loved had been slowly driven away. Every relationship had been sabotaged by the people he trusted most. And now, even as he felt something genuine for Amara, he feared history repeating itself. Yet Amara didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She challenged him, softly but firmly. "You deserve more than just responsibility, Kendrick. You deserve someone who chooses you, too." Her words stirred something inside him he hadn't felt in a long time. The idea that he could exist outside of his family's demands, that he could care for them and still care for himself. But danger loomed. Kendrick didn't know it yet, but his family had already started plotting. They saw Amara as a threat, not just to their control, but to the life they had grown comfortable taking from him. And Amara, with her quiet strength and patience, was about to challenge everything they thought they owned. Kendrick Moore had always given in. He had sacrificed, he had provided, and he had let his family dictate the rules of his life. But that day, he decided something had to change. He married Amara quietly. No announcement, no fanfare. Just the courthouse, a few witnesses, and a promise that felt heavier than anything he had ever said before. He didn't tell his mother, his sisters, or even a single friend. This time, he wanted control. This time, he wanted love to come first. The next morning, he brought her home. The mansion felt strangely silent, almost anticipatory. Kendrick's heart pounded as he stepped through the front door. He didn't know what the reaction would be, but he was prepared. Or so he thought. Gloria answered the door first. Her smile froze when she saw Amara standing beside him. "Who is this?" she asked, her tone polite but sharp. "She's my wife, legally married. We're planning the ceremony now." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Simone appeared from the kitchen, eyes narrowing. Renee, who had been scrolling her phone in the living room, suddenly put it down. Kayla picked from the staircase. All four women froze. "You what?" Simone finally hissed. "My wife," Kendrick repeated, firmer this time. The room exploded. Accusations, disbelief, and outrage bounced off every wall. Gloria demanded to know why he hadn't consulted the family. Simone accused Amara of trying to steal him and claimed she was only with Kendrick because of his money. Renee tried to cry, to guilt him into saying it was just a prank. Kayla, as usual, threw in sarcastic comments about how this would ruin everything. Amara didn't flinch. She stood tall, her calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos around her. And Kendrick, for the first time in years, realized he didn't have to defend her. She was already defending herself by simply being unshakable. Over the next few days, the wedding planning became a battlefield. Kendrick's family attempted to control every detail, the guest list, the budget, even the choice of flowers. They insisted on imposing their tastes, their rules, and their demands, all while framing it as family tradition. Every conversation with Kendrick's sisters felt like walking through a minefield, but Kendrick had changed. Quietly, without shouting, he started saying no. He redirected conversations. He refused to bend to petty arguments. He even set limits on financial interference. Each no felt like pulling himself out of quicksand. The sisters, of course, didn't take it well. Simone began subtle sabotage, calling vendors, changing orders, and spreading rumors to friends. Renee tried emotional manipulation, crying at dinner to guilt Kendrick into surrendering. Kayla staged small crises, hoping to pull him back into old patterns. Gloria, the silent observer, let them all fume while subtly making suggestions that were really commands. Through it all, Amara remained the calm anchor. She reminded Kendrick of what life could be, a life where love and respect came first and family demands came second. She quietly encouraged him to fight for his boundaries, to finally stand up for himself without fear. But the storm wasn't over. The deeper Kendrick dug his heels, the more aggressive his family became. And little did he know, Amara had secrets of her own, secrets connected to his past, to the very moment when he had almost given up on life, secrets that, when revealed, would turn the family chaos upside down. Kendrick Moore had faced every challenge his family threw at him: financial demands, emotional manipulation, relentless criticism, but nothing prepared him for the truth about Amara. It started quietly over coffee one Saturday morning in her small apartment in Houston. Amara had invited him over not to talk about wedding plans, but about the past. Kendrick thought he knew her story, a successful woman who had quietly watched him grow from a struggling student to a man of wealth and influence. But the moment she began, he realized he knew nothing. "My father, he helped you," Amara said, her voice soft but unwavering. Kendrick blinked, unsure he had heard correctly. "Back in college, when you were struggling with tuition, when you were close to giving up, it was him. He paid for your scholarship." Kendrick felt the room spin. Memories came rushing back. The endless nights of study, the mounting bills, the silent relief when that mysterious scholarship arrived. He had never known who was behind it. He had assumed it was luck or maybe fate. He had never imagined it was her family. You knew?"
Kendrick asked, voice barely above a whisper. I did, Amara said. I asked my father to help. I couldn't stand seeing you struggle, and I watched you from afar. I saw your hard work, your sacrifices. I saw how you give everything to your family, even at your own expense. Kendrick's heart pounded. Everything about Amara suddenly made sense. Her calm strength, her patience, the way she never judged him, never demanded anything. She had been part of his story long before he even knew her name. But the timing of her revelation came with complications. Kendrick's family, unaware of this connection, continued their campaign of interference. Simone had started hinting that Amara was only interested in Kendrick's wealth. Renee whispered that she was sneaky and too independent for a man like him.
Kayla threw small crises, testing his patience. Even Gloria, subtle and manipulative as ever, suggested that Amara might change him and pull him away from his family obligations. Kendrick realized the irony. The woman who had saved him when he was on the edge of despair was now being attacked by the very people who had benefited from his sacrifices. And worse, he had spent years letting them dictate the narrative of his life, allowing them to chase away every other person who tried to care for him. I didn't tell you before, Amara continued, because I wanted you to see them clearly, to realize what they were taking from you and what you are capable of standing up for. Kendrick leaned back, absorbing the weight of her words. He finally understood the depth of the manipulation he had endured, the invisible chains his family had wrapped around him. And now, for the first time, he could see a path forward, one where he could protect himself, protect Amara, and finally set boundaries that would last. But the revelation also came with danger. Amara's secret, once revealed, would shake his family to its core. The sisters and his mother had no idea that the woman they tried to undermine was tied to his rise in ways they could never imagine. Kendrick felt a mixture of anger, relief, and hope. Anger at the people who had tried to control his life. Relief that someone who truly understood him was finally by his side. Hope that he could finally reclaim control of his own destiny. Something deep inside told him that the real battle for respect, love, and freedom was just beginning. And this time, he wasn't alone. The day Kendrick Moore had hoped would be filled with love and celebration, instead felt like a battlefield. His mansion, usually a place of calm, now buzzed with tension, whispered argument, and thinly veiled hostility. Every corner seemed to hold a silent war between the family he had built and the woman he had chosen. Amara arrived early, her hands calm but her eyes sharp. She had known the challenges ahead, his sister's temper, his mother's constant interference, but nothing could have prepared her for the storm that awaited. Gloria, ever the matriarch, started immediately. I don't think this is the right shade of flowers, she said, hands on her hips. Simone followed with, we need to invite my friends. They'll want to see the Moore wedding. Renee interjected, claiming the catering budget was too low, and Kayla started fretting over seating arrangements for people who weren't even confirmed. Kendrick felt a familiar weight pressing down, the pressure to provide, to negotiate, to fix everything he had worked decades to manage alone. But this time, he didn't. He let Amara handle it, and she did, gracefully, correcting errors, speaking calmly yet firmly, earning quiet respect from vendors and staff alike. But his family wasn't finished. They tested every boundary he tried to set. Simone criticized the dress Amara chose, implying it wasn't family appropriate. Renee whispered rumors about Amara's intentions to guests, trying to sow doubt and tension. Kayla threw small tantrums over trivial details, hoping to push Kendrick back into his old role of problem solver. And Gloria, quietly observing, issued subtle commands disguised as helpful suggestions, trying to regain the control she had always held over him. The tension reached its peak during the rehearsal dinner. Words were exchanged, accusations flew. Gloria suggested Amara was trying to take your brother away from us. Simone mocked Amara's family background, and Renee whispered, just loud enough for Kendrick to hear, that this marriage was going to ruin everything. Amara remained calm. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't cry. Instead, she looked Kendrick in the eye and whispered, this is why we need boundaries. Kendrick felt a surge of emotion, frustration, anger, fear, but also clarity. For the first time in years, he realized he didn't have to fix everything, he didn't have to absorb every insult, and he didn't have to allow the people he loved to control his happiness. As the rehearsal ended, Amara pulled Kendrick aside.
"Your family doesn't know who I am or what I've done for you," she said quietly. Kendrick blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Amara smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides secrets. The sisters, oblivious to the truth, continued their small sabotage. Each argument, each insult, each interference pushed Kendrick closer to a breaking point. And in the back of his mind, he knew boundaries had to be set, and this time they would not be negotiable. As the night ended, tension hung in the air. Kendrick looked at Amara, and she looked back with quiet strength. Together, they were ready, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the next confrontation, the moment when words turned to action, was coming sooner than he wanted. Kendrick Moore thought he had prepared for every challenge, controlling sisters, a demanding mother, endless crises, but nothing could have readied him for the truth that was about to surface. It started subtly. Amara had invited Kendrick's family over under the pretense of discussing the wedding arrangements. Gloria, Simone, Renee, and Kayla arrived confident, already convinced they would assert control, dictate the details, and remind Kendrick who really ran the house. But Amara had a plan. She remained calm, poised, and quietly in control, letting the family chatter themselves into a frenzy before dropping the bomb. "My father is the one who sponsored Kendrick back in college," Amara said casually, letting her words hang like lightning in the air. "He covered tuition, books, and expenses when he could have done anything else. He believed in Kendrick's potential when nobody else did."
For a moment, silence. Then came the disbelief. Gloria's mouth fell open. Simone's eyes narrowed, trying to hide shock, but failing. Renee's expression twisted into a mix of suspicion and envy. Kayla muttered under her breath. Amara continued, gently but firmly. "My father isn't just wealthy. He's built businesses across the country. He made sacrifices for Kendrick because he believed in him. And now I'm here, not just as Kendrick's wife, but as someone who knows what it means to fight for someone you love." The family didn't know where to look first. Their jealousy, entitlement, and anger collided in the room. For the first time, they realized the woman they had been trying to undermine wasn't just some opportunist. She had been part of Kendrick's story from the very beginning. Simone stepped forward, voice dripping with sarcasm. "So what? We're supposed to just sit here and pretend this doesn't change anything?" "It does change everything," Kendrick said, quietly but firmly. "Because the truth is, I don't owe anyone anything except respect. And I decide how that respect is earned." Gloria tried to regain control, attempting to frame Amara's revelation as a brag or show of wealth, but even her words sounded hollow compared to the undeniable facts now in front of them. Renee, usually quick to manipulate, faltered, realizing the power dynamic had shifted. Kayla, always chaotic, couldn't muster her usual tricks. Even Simone, the eldest and most aggressive, paused, forced to confront a truth she couldn't twist. For Kendrick, this was more than a reveal about wealth. It was proof that loyalty and genuine support had existed long before entitlement, manipulation, or control. He finally understood that the woman standing beside him had sacrificed quietly for him years ago, a stark contrast to the family who demanded endlessly, giving nothing but expectations. But the relief was short-lived. While some cracks of respect had appeared, the sisters weren't ready to let go. They whispered amongst themselves, plotting their next moves. Kendrick felt a familiar pressure rise. The battle was far from over. Amara, sensing his tension, touched his arm and whispered, "It's time to set boundaries. They need to know the rules now." Kendrick's jaw tightened. For years, he had let his family push him around, chase away the people he cared about, and ignore the sacrifices he made. No more. The time of hesitation was over. The confrontation that would finally teach his family respect was coming. And deep down, Kendrick knew that once it happened, nothing would ever be the same. The wedding was supposed to be a celebration of love, a moment Kendrick Moore had fought for his entire adult life. But what unfolded that day was nothing short of chaos. Tensions had been simmering for weeks. The family, still bitter from Amara's reveal about her father's role in Kendrick's past, had quietly plotted small sabotages. Simone had criticized the seating arrangements, Renee whispered rumors to guests, Kayla staged minor crises, and Gloria hovered, offering suggestions that were really demands. Kendrick had tried to remain calm, trying to let Amara handle the minor battles, but as the ceremony drew closer, the pressure reached a breaking point.
It started with Simone. She cornered Amara in the living room, voice low but venomous. "You think you can just waltz in and take him away after all we've done for him?" Amara, unshaken, looked her directly in the eye. "I'm not taking him. I'm standing with him. You've had your chance for respect. Now it's my turn." Simone sneered and, without thinking, slapped Amara across the face. The room froze. Guests gasped. Kendrick's heart stopped for a second, and then rage ignited like a wildfire he had been holding back for years. He stepped forward, hand shaking, voice low but dangerous. "Everyone out, now." Gloria tried to intervene. "Kendrick, don't." "Out!" Kendrick roared louder this time. "All of you, get out of my house." The sisters stumbled, shocked at the sudden ferocity. Simone tried to argue, but Kendrick was already moving towards the door, guiding them out one by one. Renee cried, Kayla muttered threats, and Gloria's face was pale, realizing she no longer had control. Once the door closed behind them, Kendrick turned to Amara, trembling but calm. "Are you okay?" he asked. Amara nodded, brushing her cheek gently. "I'm fine," she said, but Kendrick could see the sting of the slap. For the first time, Kendrick allowed himself to feel the full weight of everything. The years of manipulation, the endless sacrifices, the women who had been chased away, the control his family had exerted over his life. And now he was done. That day marked a turning point. Kendrick didn't just enforce boundaries physically, he enforced them financially and emotionally. For 6 months, not a single dollar left his bank account for his mother or sisters. Calls were unanswered, requests ignored, and slowly the silence forced reflection. It was painful. Gloria, Simone, Renee, and Kayla were shocked by the sudden absence of Kendrick's support. The reality of their dependence hit harder than any argument or manipulation ever had. During that time, Amara remained his anchor. She reminded him that standing up for himself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. She had known the weight of sacrifice and had chosen to support him, not control him. Her presence, calm and steady, gave Kendrick the strength he needed to finally break the cycle of entitlement and manipulation. Then, one evening, after months of silence, Kendrick's phone buzzed. It was a message from Gloria. "We are sorry. We respect Amara. We respect you. Please come home." It wasn't instant forgiveness, but it was a start. And for Kendrick, it proved that boundaries, once set and enforced, could lead to change, respect, and ultimately, peace.
That night, Kendrick looked at Amara and smiled. "This is what I've been waiting for all these years," he said. Amara squeezed his hand, quietly, knowingly. And it's just the beginning. Months had passed since the slap, since Kendrick Moore finally drew a line in the sand. For the first time, he felt a strange but liberating thing. Peace. His family had learned, slowly but surely, that their entitlement had limits and that he was no longer the boy who would give endlessly without question. Gloria, Simone, Renee, and Kayla came to the house one evening. They looked hesitant, unsure, and maybe even ashamed. Kendrick didn't speak immediately. He watched them, feeling the weight of years of manipulation and dependency. Then Gloria spoke, her voice quiet. "We're sorry, Kendrick, and we respect Amara. We respect you." It was a small moment, but monumental. The apology was genuine, tinged with understanding that respect had to be earned, not demanded. Slowly, over time, relationships rebuilt themselves, but on Kendrick's terms, with boundaries, clarity, and honesty. Amara had been his anchor through it all. Her calm strength, patience, and unwavering support had shown him what true partnership looked like. And now, finally, they could build a life together without interference, without manipulation, without guilt. Their wedding, once a battlefield, became a symbol not just of love, but of resilience, courage, and the power of standing up for oneself. The sisters began to take responsibility for their own lives. Simone found a small business opportunity of her own. Renee went back to school to finish a degree she had abandoned, and Kayla started learning to care for her child independently. Gloria, though older and set in her ways, began to acknowledge the limits of control she could exercise. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and it was earned. Kendrick, for his part, realized that providing didn't mean sacrificing everything. Love, loyalty, and respect could coexist with generosity, but only if boundaries were clear.
He had spent decades conditioned to believe he owed his life to his family, but now he knew he owed it to himself first, and that made every sacrifice after that intentional, not forced. One quiet evening, Kendrick and Amara sat on the porch, watching the sun set over Houston. The city hummed around them, but inside there was calm. Kendrick reached for her hand and smiled. "This feels like the first time I'm truly living for me," he said. Amara smiled back. "And it's only the beginning," she said, eyes glinting with the same spark that had drawn her to him years ago. The lesson was clear. Boundaries were not a sign of selfishness. They were a declaration of self-respect, a shield against manipulation, and a path toward genuine happiness. Kendrick had learned the hard way, but he had finally found freedom and love that endured, despite everything. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I want to see how far Tales by Desi has reached. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss the next story. And if you know someone who would relate to Kendrick's journey, share this video. Let them see how boundaries can change everything.